But we will start with the tariffs. The old tariffs. Trump's Liberation Day, which he, I don't know, I think it's like the last week that he dubbed it, the Liberation Day or the Day of Tariffs.
Why? Why is it Liberation Day? Even that doesn't make any sense. Like,
I don't know.
it's just
Nothing
so
he does.
foolish.
Nothing
I do
he
like that
does.
the announcement was supposed to be on April Fool's Day, and then someone obviously said, maybe not that day. And then they postponed it again from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. so they could announce it after the stock market closed.
Yes, I did see that.
So yeah, full confidence. Full confidence in
it. Right. Well, I'm not good at explaining this stuff, so I'm going to let people who know more than me. Unfortunately, not Craig Rennie. Would have been great to have him on the show tonight because he would have probably explained this better than I ever could. But the news can do it for us. So I'm going to play the 3 news one, and then I'm going to play the 1 news one because there's different things on each one. And I'm going to point something out to you, Chewie, that my partner pointed out to me, and it made me absolutely giggle on the TVNZ one, which I think you'll appreciate. Let's hope this all works.
Countries have been quick to discuss payback. New Zealand has already ruled that out, with our Deputy Prime Minister presenting today's news as a win.
We've got out of a situation where we could have done far, far worse. It's a day of celebration.
The US stock market is definitely not celebrating.
I've never seen anything like it. This, I think fair to say, is worse than the worst case scenario of the tariffs that many in the market expected the president to impose.
Economist Justin Wolfers sharing these figures by the World Bank to demonstrate just how dramatic today's announcement is. A list of average tariffs as of 2022 shows the US was at 1.5%. New Zealand was at 1.7%. Now America will quite literally be off the chart with the highest rate since 1910. Trump did provide one freebie on Liberation Day.
I brought a hat just in case it got too windy, but here, would anybody like a hat?
The president worried about the Washington wind,
Jesus.
but an economic storm is brewing.
Okay, let's see. So who wins in Trump's trade war?
Well, the whole idea here is to boost domestic investment. So Trump is counting on billions all of a sudden flooding into the domestic market. He's made it very clear if you're making everything in America, then you won't pay any tariffs. But economists, not just in America, all over the world, are very sceptical about that. They're actually going as far as to say this is a disaster for America's economy. We know that tariffs push up prices. We know that often it ends up hurting the consumer more than the company. We also know that American factories who want to make their own stuff are now going to be importing things. Their costs will go up and they'll become less competitive in the global market. So it really does seem to be affecting America as much as it will the rest of the world.
Yeah. I'll show you the second clip as well in a second. But my favourite thing in terms of the list of countries is, Norfolk Island?
Mm-hmm.
They got slapped with tariffs. Do you know what's on Norfolk Island?
Next to nothing.
Yeah, birds. 2,000, the population of 2,000 birds, and they were like, why did we don't export or import anything. Why did you tariff us?
There's another, like everything to do with this, it's stupid. But me and my workmates were going through the list. And yeah, there's the obvious ones like Norfolk Island. I think there's another uninhabited island that's just got penguins on it, and that features on the list. Yeah. They're like, my workmate was going, what do you think Madagascar exports? Because he's just slapped them with a big tariff. Or Lesotho, the landlocked country in the middle of South Africa, something like a 96% tariff. None of it makes any sense. They've also made a pretty, some countries might say this, a pretty big diplomatic mistake by mentioning Taiwan by name as a country separate from, say, the other China, East Taiwan. Yeah, so that is something that American diplomats have been tripping over themselves for decades to sort of go, oh, no, you know, there's one China. Oh no, we don't know where to go with this. It is spectacular. The when they were explaining how they calculated the tariffs, because everyone's like, none of this makes any sense. I assume someone in the clip is going to mention this. Oh, yep, cool.
Yep.
Strap in, chat, because the way that they worked out the percentages is insane. Like, there's
I'm not a math person.
Anyone, like, it's not even the
but
math.
It does seem strange.
It's just, that's not how tariffs work. Like, there's nobody in the building. I feel like there's one guy there going, hey guys, does anybody else know what a tariff is, or is it just me? Nobody's listening to me. Do I exist? Because none of it makes any sense.
Well, let's see if TV1 can do a good job of explaining this. This is their article. I'm going to point something, just a little bright spark of the day that might just make you giggle a little bit. Nothing to do with the tariffs, really. It's just a bit of a giggle at someone's expense.
No audio on that one.
I didn't press the button, guys.
Gotta press the button.
I didn't press the button. Try that again.
Imports. Here's business correspondent Katie Bradford.
80% of the skincare products manufactured at this Christchurch factory are shipped to the US. They'll now be hit with a 10% tariff.
For us, the US is strategic, and we know that it's an opportunity for us to grow further. It's what we do with that pricing and whether it's the right thing to put a price increase through.
Proudly viewing the products, the Prime Minister...
Look at them go, yeah, I know what's happening.
Can you tell me what's different about what's going on with the people in this photo? Can you just spot the difference?
I tell you what, they've saved some money on hairnets.
They sure have. My partner pointed it out to me, and he's like, look, he doesn't need one.
That's why I could never work in a factory, to be honest, when they said, oh, you need to wear a hairnet and a beard net, and I'm like, nah, I'm out.
It's just funny. That's all I had to point out.
Making his views on President Trump's tariffs clear.
We don't think that is good for global trade. We don't think countries do well when there are high tariffs and when there are trade wars.
Trump's trade barriers report had just a short blurb about New Zealand, singling out pork, wine exports and pharmaceuticals. Most of our tariffs are in the 1 to 2% range, but the confusing calculations used by Trump's team claim we charge 20%.
My understanding is that it's based on our trade surplus with America divided by our exports to America. And that takes you to about 19.6% if you use US data. So I think that's where they got their 20% from. It's certainly not the tariff that we impose on US imports.
Whatever the
So that kind of went over my head, but I did find something, someone did explain this a little bit. The average tariff is 1.9%. The US had likely come to that figure through a combination of the GST rate, plus we do have some tariffs against the US and some products set at a minimum WTO agreed level. But given that explanation, he said it made no sense that stated tariffs for Australia was 10%. They also gave a GST, and similarly, the United Kingdom is assessed at 10 as well, and they have a value added tax.
It is just not what a tariff is. So that's why everybody's really confused about it. When he did that, you saw New Zealand government officials and New Zealand trade officials going, why the fuck does he think we put a 20% tariff where there are tariffs, because we don't have a free trade agreement with the US. We've got negotiated trade deals, sure, but it's not free trade. So there are tariffs. I think the largest tariff mentioned was about 1.9%. So when they saw that much, much higher figure there, people just went, where the fuck has this come from? And yeah, one pass was, oh, it's GST plus this, that kind of gets us close. But it seems when you look at what he's done for other countries, it is the trade deficit, which is not a tariff. So he is pointing retaliatory tariffs at countries that are just trading like all countries. There's no country out there that trades with another country completely equally. We give you this much stuff and we take that much stuff from you. It's not equal. You know, China's trade deficit with they make and manufacture so much stuff. They're always exporting way more than they import. And some countries and some economists sort of go, well, it's got to be much more equal, otherwise people call in their debts and all of this sort of stuff. But decades and decades of removing things like trade tariffs and getting closer and closer to free trade. And that's why the free trade deals are so important, is, you know, this non-protectionist global economy is something that's been worked at for like half a century. And Trump, in the space of a couple of months, has gone, fuck it, we're going to set fire to the whole thing. We're the best. It's mad. I did see a suggestion that they've just, because if you ask some of the main consumer AIs out there, such as Elon's Grok, what a trade tariff is, this is the formula that it spits out. So, I mean, maybe if the entire US government was staffed with absolute window-licking, helmet-wearing cultists, that they must just go, people say we don't know what a tariff is, but I asked Grok and we are deploying that against the entire world. Doesn't seem unbelievable. Seems crazy, but not unbelievable.
Yeah. So that's great. Tariffs for everyone is basically what I got out of that. I was arguing the point with my partner that should we just retaliate and also do well, no, he's doing reciprocal, we're doing retaliatory. Well, not we are, but the rest of the world. And he said, no, our economy and our GDP is kind of shit. We would just hurt us more. And I'm like, yeah, that's fair. And I was like, but the rest of the world's kind of doing it. And he's like, yeah, because their GDP is much higher than us. And I was like, well, Germany's getting hit pretty hard because they're also getting the auto industry tariffs as well, which is going to hit the luxury, the German car market, the Volkswagens, BMWs, Porsches, I think was the other one.
Yep.
And he's like, yeah, but look at their GDP. And I was like, oh yeah, it's a couple trillion compared to ours.
See, and this has always been the thing with tariffs, is it's a protectionist policy. Like there have always been quite high tariffs towards cars, especially coming into the US, because the US has its own massive auto industry, right? It employs lots of people, it makes lots of money. So if you put tariffs on those cheaper foreign cars coming in, like from Japan and Korea, and now especially Chinese EVs and German, European autos, all of that sort of stuff, they have quite a high markup on it to make them less attractive to American buyers, to keep their own auto industry going. And traditionally, those auto manufacturers have got around that, but like Volkswagen will just go, all right, well, what if we do a factory in Alabama and create a whole bunch of jobs and we just make Volkswagens in America? Will they get tariffed? No. So then they do that.
Yeah.
It's a way of protecting your own economy. And then when it comes to us, where we are, you know, a country that lives or die on agricultural exports. And look, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert at this sort of like geopolitical level of economics and that sort of thing. But when Luxon waded into them and go, yeah, well, I don't think it's good for the global economy, but I'm also not going to do anything. Sure, if we'd put retaliatory tariffs on the US, would they even fucking notice? Probably not. But what do our exporters think? Do they sort of see what Luxon said today of like, oh, yeah, or what Winston going, oh, it's a cause for celebration that it wasn't worse than this? Do they look at our government and go, why don't you guys have our backs? Because now we have to fucking deal with it.
Yeah, that's why I was like, well, shouldn't we retaliate in some regards? Because it kind of, I saw it as just
right.
weak. They kind of just walked over. It's like, yeah, oh well. Like it would have been nicer if he'd said something along the lines of, look, we can't afford to do retaliatory tariffs on the US. They're much bigger than us, and we're not as big as the EU, for example, or Australia, who I just looked up, also have a $1.7 trillion GDP. So compared to our 200 billion, I think it is. But it would have been nice for him to at least say, look, we'll do our best and we'll find a solution to keep our prices down, or work with the industries that are going to be affected by this. Like, I don't know, maybe food exports are going to go, or imports are going to go up a little bit. For example, could we tackle that supermarket duopoly a little harder and actually do something about it to keep prices at a certain rate? I don't know. But it would have been nice, I agree, if he'd just said something along the lines of, we can't, but we'll try and find another solution to mitigate the impact on you guys.
Yeah, certainly that business. Like if I owned that business that was in that piece with Luxon looking on at machinery that he doesn't understand, I would certainly not be looking to continue the push into America. I'd be looking for other markets. And I think that is something that is going to be the result of this. I think people are going to go, well, if you make it too hard to get into our markets, we'll just take our product elsewhere. And you see what you see in Canada of very much a like buy Canadian, don't buy American campaign that is doing some damage, especially to the the whiskey manufacturers. The bourbon manufacturers are really, really hurting. And that sort of, okay, well, he doesn't want to trade with us, we'll trade with each other sort of thing. And look, the side effect of that is that it might stimulate the US economy. Maybe, as long as they don't need steel from Canada or raw materials from elsewhere in the world. If they've got it in America, maybe they'll be fine. But I think when all of the experts are sitting there and going, well, look, conservatively, we think this is going to increase costs to the US consumer by about $6,000 a year. People are going to notice that.
And I think it was said
will
that
this affect
me
here in New Zealand? Probably not.
I think it was $140 to the average person a year is what it will cost us. So I guess $140 looks pretty slim compared to $6,000 on the US. It's yeah.
But all of this goes against economic theory. All of this stuff, all this protectionist tariffs and trade wars and that sort of thing. This isn't new thinking. This isn't someone going, well, I've got a fucking great idea that's never been tried before. It's been tried before. In the 20s, the turn of last century. And the effects were catastrophic. And that's why everybody went, yeah, you don't go down this road. But here we are. Look on, grab your popcorn, your locally produced popcorn.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the rest of the world does. Someone did point out that Germany doesn't inflict tariffs on the US. It is the EU because they're part of the EU. But because the EU is kind of a broad economic powerhouse in a sense, kind of covering all of the small and the big countries. I would hope and I assume that the small guys who perhaps have a GDP similar to us will perhaps get carried a little bit by the guys who can afford the tariffs, the retaliatory tariffs, is what I assume. And they also can just trade between each other. So I'm hoping between all of us, we can go, hey US, do you want to not do that? Because it's going to hurt you more than it's going to hurt the rest of us.
They've got to work it out for themselves, whether they do before they collapse. Who knows? Maybe in Trump's fourth term, as he rounds 102 years of age.
I was just about to say that. Someone said third term, and I'm like, dude, he's gonna roll over and die in the next 10 years. Surely. The guy, like, you've seen how much presidents age in their terms. And sometimes it's only like, sometimes it's 8 years. Typically, they kind of age a good 20 in their 8 years. But even 4 years, Trump went from looking a little bit more plump and perky. Like, by the end of that, he looks pretty
Don't like
ragged.
the use of the word perky there.
Perky.
Completely
Perky's-
inappropriate.
Yeah, probably not.
Oh, who do you think's going to go first, Trump or Winston?
No, Winnie's got it. He's got the weird. I don't know if it's a gene or it's like a genetic something that happens to people that's like chronically smoke. Have you ever had people in your life who are chronic smokers, packs a day sort of stuff, and they just seem to live on forever? They don't get lung cancer.
I think what
They
it
just
is
keep going.
inside his wizened old body. You have like the diseased alcoholic liver fighting with the tobacco cancer ridden lungs, and someone's going to come out on top, but it's a stalemate of what's going to kill him, and that'll just mean he lives forever.
Yeah, he's smoked and drunk so much that he's preserved himself.
It's a hostile. It's kind of like chemotherapy. His body is just such a hostile environment for any other organism. He's just going to live forever.
Yeah. So I mean, Winnie's doing. I mean, they're both kind of doing okay. I'd say Winnie's probably doing a bit better, but they're both kind of losing their minds. Trump is doing the whole waddle thing. Like, he can't dance. He just does the shuffle. He looks like he's pooped his pants just about every. There you go.
Right.
We all know he's having some issues. So I don't
dear.
know. But I can't see him living out this. He might live it out, but I swear he's gonna cock it in some regard to before.
Will America survive him?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm expecting a civil war. That is not what I expected to see in my lifetime. I assumed I would see, and I was very what do you call it? Not the opposite of pessimistic. That I would live out my 80 odd years because I thought climate change would kind of kill us. But maybe it's a civil war and it's the Cold War turns and we all get nuked. I don't know. Or America decides to invade us because we're close to the Antarctic or something. Or we're closer to China and they can launch missiles from here.
Look,
I don't know.
at this case,
possible.
if they do invade us, I think it's because they're lost. They're probably looking for that island full of penguins that they kicked off a retaliatory trade war against, and they're like, we're not going to stand for this disrespect from those fucking birds.